Hi guys, happy new year, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of already halfway through the first month, so a bit late in saying happy new year, but happy new year. So I just wanted to drop some quick thoughts on this whole Meghan Markle debate. So I don't like to see any black woman persecuted, especially if I feel like that persecution is really unfair. And while I may have, some thoughts about Meghan Markle that are not necessarily always positive, it's important for us as black women to band together to defend one of our own, regardless of whether you think that she's kind of, like not exactly black. The treatment that she is receiving is that of a black woman, not necessarily that of a mixed race person. She's not benefiting from light skin privilege right now. She's actually just being treated as a black woman. So that is why I feel it's really important for us to defend this black woman. But when very first time I saw Meghan Markle was obviously in Suits, and I actually knew of her before she became Mrs. I don't know, Royal or whatever, Mrs. Wales. I don't know what their surname is, but the first time I saw her, I actually thought she was a white woman or like a spicy Latina woman or something like that. So she's quite racially ambiguous, to be fair. Though obviously she is being treated with all the contempt that, black women recognize. Anyway, so then obviously like halfway through series 1 of Suits, they kind of revealed that, she is of mixed race because then they introduced her dad. So I was like, oh, I thought I recognized you as one of us, because even though she is, racially ambiguous, you could see that there was something, a little bit spicy, a little bit from Mother Africa in her, especially around the edges, because that's where, normally, you're given away. So, and then obviously when we found out that she was marrying Prince William, I was like, oh, okay, a black princess, all right, you get you a prince, girl, So I was actually pleased for her, and I was equally as excited, by the fact that we were going to see this royal wedding with, this new princess. So anyway, as things then got revealed about her, I kind of sort of like sat back a little bit. I was like, okay, you are divorced, you're older than him, you're American, and you's black. So, she's kind of like not exactly the ideal woman that a prince would be marrying. So already she's kind of, at a disadvantage in comparison to sort of like the blonde-haired, blue-blooded, white chick that everybody expected him to marry. So then, like, immediately afterwards, you started to notice some very sort of dog whistle, racist press coverage of her. Because, obviously started off with the whole, straight out of Compton headline that was in the Daily Mail. Then there was like this suggestion that she was from essentially ghetto stock. Like she had exotic blood was another thing that I saw somebody had said. And then there was a whole bunch of articles about her that were kind of like quite negative. So those ones clearly very racist. And I think we have to split out the criticism of her into what I could consider, 1, racist, 2, kind of par for the course, so you expect to be criticized, and 3, kind of, very much pitting her against Kate Middleton. So and then the 4th is things that legitimately I think she's rightly being criticized for. So let's start with number 1. So the racist stuff. No one can ever defend that. And for people, like when I see, especially white people in the media talking about, oh, the coverage hasn't been racist. The reason they are able to say that with, such conviction is that they choose to conflate the racist coverage of her with the legitimate criticism of her. So we've talked about the racist ones. Then we've talked about the stuff that is sort of par for the course that you're going to be criticized. The fact is, she's coming from not, like I said, an ideal background for somebody who's going to marry basically the whitest of the whitest of the whitest people, right? Prince Harry, whose family's whiteness goes back millions of generations, right? So, so white people want to preserve, the element of purity. But then also, you know, being divorced, also, you know, kind of being older than him, and you are an American, you are going to be criticized and kind of like, you sort of like harshly treated because you are an outsider. You are not the ideal that anybody would have picked for him as, you know, to enter into the royal family. So even if she had not been black, and she had literally just been divorced and also older than him, she would have faced some of the criticism that she has faced. So that's number two. Then we've got the kind of like pitting her against Kate Middleton. So, you know, things like, you know, she's touching her baby bump all the time. And, you know, BuzzFeed did a really good sort of like comparison of how sometimes the same journalist within months will write one really glowing report about Kate Middleton and then like a terrible one about Meghan Markle. And I think the one that stood out for me in that BuzzFeed article was the one where they were talking about why she was touching her bump, and then, you know, by the same persons, they were like, you know, Kate is glowing and touching her bump, you know, like in glowing terms. So you had that where there's like rank hypocrisy among the media in the way in which they treat Kate over Meghan. But I think that that sort of pitting them against each other would have happened anyway, regardless of whether she was black or whether she was, you know, kind of like, even if she'd come from like ideal stock, I think she still would have been pitted against the future queen, essentially, which is what Kate Middleton eventually, I believe, will be. I'm not exactly sure what her title will be. So then you have that, and then you have what I think sometimes could be legitimate criticism of her, right? So being hypocritical, her and her husband, right? So this is the more recent criticism that she's had. So you've had things like and let me just say, some of the pitting her against Kate Middleton, some of it has been downright cruel. Like the worst ones were the ones where there was an article about flowers potentially killing Princess Charlotte, who is the daughter of Kate, because of allergies. I was just like, that was such a wicked and horrible thing for anybody to write. And then another horrible one was around Kate Middleton and you know, Meghan, which seems to be the hipster's favorite, avocados. I absolutely detest avocados. I just don't even understand the joy that people get from them. What a tasteless, disgusting fruit. And the texture's even worse. Don't at me. So yeah, that was another one that I just thought, you know, for Kate, it was okay for her to like avocados. For Meghan, she was fueling like, you know, drug lords and water shortages and also violence over, you know, avocados. So they're very, very like horrible and wicked and, you know, articles about her, pitting her against Kate. And like I said, those things would have happened anyway, regardless of whether or not she was from a good stock. Then finally, the things that I think you could legitimately criticize her for. So one, this whole thing with her dad, and, you know, let me just be clear, the whole dad side of the family just seem to be some weird hillbillies who are so desperate for attention that they will literally sell her out for anything, right? So you've got her dad who, like, this really weird dynamic that she had with him, because she started off with like, I remember she said something about her dad, you know, telling her not to worry about her freckles because, you know, she was like she was a bit embarrassed about her freckles, and he told her that her freckles was like something, she should see her freckles as being like stars in the night sky or something like that. I thought, oh, how cute, you know, like she seemed to have a good relationship with him. And then all of a sudden she gets, you know, engaged and subsequently married to Prince Harry, and everything seems to fall down from there. So I'm just wondering what on earth is going on. Like, why is it that when she got married, why she didn't like send her PR team down to control her dad? Like, what the heck? Why did you leave him in the wind to go out and talk to the Daily Mail and be tricked by photographers and, you know, tricked by journalists into essentially saying things that he probably didn't mean to say? Now, I don't know her dad, but that's just the impression I get, that he doesn't come across as a wicked person who's just literally just trying to destroy her. I just think he's kind of like a confused old man, and I think there might be an element of dementia there, which I think the journalists have taken full advantage of, and she herself has not really taken control of it. So then you move on to the narrative about her, which is that she's very quick to cut people off and basically use people for kind of whatever she can get, and then kind of jettisons them after she's kind of done with them, right? And there are legitimate arguments for that. So in one instance, I'm kind of like, okay, well, if she kind of like decides to dash people after she's done with them, that's not a very good thing. But at the same time, if her strategy is to kind of cut people who she thinks are toxic in her life out of her life, then I actually think that's probably a quite legitimate thing to do, because so many of us hold on to family because, they are family, even if they are thoroughly toxic to you as an individual and your mental health. So if that is her strategy, then you know what, more power to you. But at the same time, you then look at, so I'm looking at it from that lens when I'm thinking about how this whole dynamic with her dad has played out. Taking aside the fact that he apparently is now going to testify in her court case against her, but that's another, I think that's probably as a result of this whole poor management of her dad from the beginning. And probably there's like two sides to every story. So maybe her dad really is just a horrible person, but giving him the benefit of the doubt, right? Just based on the fact that she seemed to have a very close relationship with him, and then all of a sudden everything sort of went downhill. So that's that. Then you have, this narrative about her being, cutting people off. And if you think about all the people that if you then think about her mum at the wedding, only her mum of her family, of her whole entire family, was at her wedding. I mean, girl, what? Like, your mum had to sit there by herself on like the most monumental occasion. I mean, for more power to Gloria Ragland, because she has handled herself with an element of dignity that I'm sure many of us do not have. She really is like an amazing woman, right? So, but taking that aside, only her mum appeared at this wedding. Only her mum, and her whole family, the mum side of the family, has kept stum. Right? They have kept stum. Nobody has said zip. Zip. Nobody has said zip in her mum's side of the family, and she chose not to invite any of them. So her mum had to sit there by herself with nobody by her side, no friend. Her mum wasn't allowed a friend. Doesn't her mum have no friends? Like, what the hell? How is this woman allowed to sit by herself on the biggest occasion, on the biggest world stage ever, by herself? Like, how is that normal? Like, I just don't get that. So so it sort of feeds in again into this narrative of her just cutting people off and slimming her group of friends down to, like a finite amount. So then you think to yourself, okay, so let's think. So her dad, apparently she had this thing with her uncle, who was her dad's brother, who had organized for her to do some kind of like work in the US. I think he was a diplomat or something, and he sort of organized an internship for her. So clearly, even he, who was like kind of tried to help you on your way, didn't get an invite. Like, even if your dad himself and the rest of his family, a bunch of hillbillies, taking aside her sister, because that woman is vile, was just weird to me, right? Cut off your dad's side of the family, cut off your mum's side of the family. Weird. And then now you're friends with Oprah. Like, I'm not being funny, right? She was not exactly a famous actress. She was kind of like, if you didn't watch Suits, you would have no idea who she is. Like, what the hell? And now you're friends with Oprah and Gayle? Like, how are you friends with these people and yet they get an invite, but your family members don't get an invite? Or, or even your mum's friend doesn't get an invite. Like, weird, okay? So things like that, I think, are legitimate things to have a go at her about. Then on top of that, you think about her and Harry talking about, climate change, and, you shouldn't be like flying as much. But here they are, just by nature of what they do, which is kind of like highlighting charities and causes that they care about, are going to have to fly. This was not something you needed to weigh in on, right? It's like a trap waiting for you to just fall into. And then they talk about what, I also think you shouldn't have so many kids. Like, what the hell, Harry? Your whole family, like, look at the size of your family. There's millions of them, millions of people. Like, your whole family is like you know, receiving taxpayer, like the biggest welfare recipients, one family receiving all of this taxpayers' money, and you're talking about don't have too many kids because of climate change. Like, what the, and then on top of that, you're then saying you're going to have another one, adding to the, the fact that every single person produces some level of waste just by virtue of living, right? Like, so some of the things, like that, I think legitimately they could be criticized for. Everything else, I think things like, pitting her against Kate, naturally going to happen. The sort of like the criticism of her as a person, I think naturally going to happen. That's what happens in the UK. Like, we don't have this attitude towards celebrities that I think Americans do, which is kind of like we have interviews where celebrities come on and then start talking about their problems, and like we don't have an Oprah version or like a Gail or some sort of newscast anchor that is so famous that all celebrities go to kind of like get like a softball kind of interview. We just don't have that in the UK, and we are very, very critical of not only public figures who get public money, but also celebrities. I mean, it's just the nature of it. I mean, personally, I don't engage in it because I have a life and I really don't give a shit, but it seems to sell quite a lot of, it causes clicks and it sells newspapers and it becomes sort of like mainstream news. So that, the thing that she doesn't like about the tabloid press is just the nature of it, like Madonna lived over here and, she had, multiple amounts of like harsh criticism. We don't love celebrities here the way Americans seem to do, nobody, we don't like invite celebrities to a couch and then the celebrities like, I suffered from, I don't know, whatever it is that I may have suffered from, and then like allow celebrities to do their celebrity sort of psychobabble talks where, it's sort of half psychology, half, motivational speaking. That's not how we are. That's not how it works in the UK. And, she should have kind of been aware of that. But having said that, I'm really sad to see her go. Really sad to see the way the media has treated her. And obviously, now she's going to be, living her best life in Canada. And frankly, more power to her. I think it's absolutely right that she goes, and leaves, because your mental health is way more important than any kind of bullshit, institution. She owes nothing to anybody. Okay, maybe, we might want our money back, that 23 million that the taxpayer spent on fixing your cottage, but, that's by the by. And again, I would have criticised, I mean, personally, I'm not like a huge fan of the royal family. The only reason I had any interest in them is because they have a black princess. Otherwise, literally, I had no interest in the royal family. But like I said, she owes nothing to anybody. Go and live in peace, you and your husband. And frankly, I see nothing wrong with them trying to live independently of the taxpayer, because when you are taking public money, you are far more open to scrutiny and criticism. And, if you are the kind of person that doesn't like it and doesn't want it, then, you have to give it up, and it seems like Prince Harry obviously loves this woman so much that he's prepared to give up, his title as prince even, they're prepared to give up, their titles of princess and duchess, from what I read. So, they are living their best life and, more power to them. And yeah, that's the end of my rant. Drop your comments in the comment box and I'll see you for the next one. Bye.